Evidence from the past. Life in Minnesota today is very different than it was for people living here thousands of years ago. Explore how storytelling and physical evidence help people understand how others lived in the past. Look for: how do archaeologists study the past? What role do elders play in preserving knowledge about the past? How has Minnesota's landscape changed over the last 12,000 years? And how did early people adapt to life over time as the landscape changed? And what are the steps in the scientific method? Key terms you're going to look for and understand: petroglyph, elder, archaeologist, perspective, oral history, artifact, scientific method, and hypothesis. About halfway between today's towns of Jeffers and Comfrey is a place where history is written in stone. A 23-mile-long ridge of red rock rises above the surrounding prairie and farmland. Changes in the shape of the land over hundreds of millions of years created this ridge. Long ago, deposits of sand and mud collected in the area. Slowly, the deposits compressed, first into soft rock, sandstone, and into hard stone or quartzite. Much of the stone remains hidden from the view under layers of soil and water. In some places, called outcroppings, the stone is visible. There on the outcroppings at the Red Rock Ridge, we begin to explore Minnesota's history. At several places on the ridge, it looks as if a giant has scratched the rock with its fingernails. The rock has, in fact, been scratched, but not by a giant. The scratches were caused by heavy ice sheets called glaciers. As they inched across the ground, glaciers have covered what is now Minnesota many times. The last one melted away from southwestern Minnesota about 12,500 years ago, or about 10,500 BCE. A braided river, like the one shown here, is wide and shallow, covering the broad area. Long before the formation of rock outcroppings at the Jeffers petroglyphs historic site, a braided river left behind deposits of sand and mud. The ridge also shows other marks that were carved not by glaciers, but instead by people. Humans may have begun living in this region about 12,000 years ago. This was approximately 10,000 BCE. They lived in small groups, adapting to the changing environment and developing new ways to live together with the people and the world around them. Around 7,000 years ago, people began leaving their mark on Long Stone Ridge in southwestern Minnesota. This happened around 5,000 BCE. Messages from the past. The Jeffers Petroglyphs Historic Site is one of the most important collections of ancient rock carvings in North America. These carvings, called petroglyphs, can tell us about the people who made them, how they lived, and what they have believed. The Jeffers site has about 5,000 carvings. Many of these carvings represent things that we can easily recognize today. These images include animals, bison, bears, wolves, turtles, elk, and human stick figures. Some of the humans seem to be holding weapons called atlatls. Others appear to be wearing headdresses with horns. Many carvings, however, are difficult for us to recognize. We may never know exactly what each symbol means, but we can still learn much from them if we are willing to listen to the people who know the most about them. One way to understand the carvings of the Jeffers is to ask the native people whose ancestors may have made the carvings. These symbols are records of histories and traditional stories. Many American Indian elders believe that Jeffers is a sacred place to which people have come for thousands of years. For some, the site still provides guidance and healing. The elders, the symbols, and the rocks speak not only of the past, but also of the present and the future. Another way to understand the carvings is to ask a type of scientist called an archaeologist. Archaeologists study human history by looking at the evidence people left behind. The petroglyphs of Jeffers are examples of the evidence. Archaeologists argue carvings like these at the Jeffers reveal important information about the people who made them and about the time and the place in which they were made. When people examine historical objects, they interpret them based on their perspective. People's experiences affect how they think about the world, both past and present. Everyone looks at things differently based on their education, culture, time period, and home. Recognizing how perspectives differ is an important part of understanding history. Let's see how two very different ways of looking at the past can help us understand one of the most familiar symbols from at the Jeffers site, the human hand. So there's a picture. There are at least 14 petroglyphs of handprints at Jeffers. They can be found across the site, mixed in with the other carvings. One way of knowing oral history. For many centuries, the native people of North America have kept their history alive through oral history. Sometimes these stories tell of events that happened long ago. Sometimes they are legends that teach lessons or explain why things are the way they are. Sometimes the stories warn what might happen in the future if young people don't listen to their elders. Oral history connects people to each other and to their past. The oral histories of many different American Indian nations include stories that can help us understand the meaning of petroglyphs found at Jeffers. Some stories are told by native people, such as the Dakota, who live in Minnesota today and whose ancestors may have made carvings at Jeffers. Others are told by native people who live far away in other parts of North America. Oral histories suggest that the handprints of Jeffers can mean many different things. Dakota Elder Vernell Wabasha on the Jeffers petroglyphs. There is a presence here. It's like walking into the church or a cathedral. You have this awe, this awesome feeling that there's something here. And there's something here that you're going to take home with you, that you're going to keep feeling. It's a beautiful and so special, I think, to hear the wind blowing. You feel it and you can hear it. And it's just like there's somebody here talking to you. Dakota elders tell us that their people have long considered shaking hands a gesture of friendship and trust. The people who carved the handprints into the rock at Jeffers might have been pledging their friendship to other people who visited the site. They might also have been leaving a sign of friendship for people like us who would come later. Grief. The hand is also a common sign of sorrow among Native people, including the Omaha and the Dakota. When Dakota women lose their husbands, for example, they will often hold their hands in front of their faces and wipe away their tears with their palms instead of their fingers. It's possible that handprints at Jeffers are meant to mark an event of deep sorrow, such as the death of a loved one. Death. Native people of the northern plains, including the Mandan, Hidatsa, Crow, and Lakota, refer to one of the most familiar groups of stars in the night sky as the hand constellation. According to the oral history of these people, the hand constellation is the place in the sky through which the souls of the dead can leave this world. The Jeffers handprints could therefore represent a death or spirit journey. Many cultures at Jeffers. The land we call Minnesota was once a part of a vast trading network that brought together Native people from many parts of North America. Over thousands of years, different people from all over North America may have come to the place now called Jeffers. When they met at Jeffers, people from various groups had the opportunity to trade, as well as share ideas and information. Likewise, these many different explorers and traders may have left marks on the rocky ridge of Jeffers. These groups may have included the Mandan, Iowa, Ottawa, Ohio, Hidatsa, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Winnebago, and the Dakota communities. Listening to oral histories can help explain the meaning of the petroglyphs. It's likely that many ideas and many cultures are represented in the carvings at the Jeffers site. Another way of knowing archaeology. Archaeologists study many types of physical evidence or artifacts. One type of petroglyph, like the one found at Jeffers, to an archaeologist, the Jeffers carving contained information that can help another answer questions such as who made the carvings, where did the people who made them come from. Depending on the questions, archaeologists use different methods to uncover information. One common method is to compare an artifact. Archaeologists have questions about to an artifact they have already studied. Sometimes, though, the answers are not easily found through comparison. Then archaeologists may conduct experiments instead. Archaeologists at Jeffers recently conducted an experiment to find out how long it may have taken to create a hand petroglyph. In doing this, they used the process called scientific method to test their ideas. The scientific method involves developing a hypothesis and conducting an experiment to it. The scientific method includes 5 basic steps, which the archaeologists at Jeffers follow to help them understand the hand petroglyph. Step 1. Ask a question. The quartzite rock on which the petroglyphs are carved is very hard. It seems like it must have been difficult without modern tools to make the carving. Since many people are fascinated by the handprints at Jeffers, it's natural to ask, how long did it take the Jeffers rock carvers to make a handprint? State a hypothesis. A previous experiment found that it was quite easy to make chips in quartzite by hitting it with another type of stone found in the region. With the knowledge, the archaeologist made an educated guess, a hypothesis. It would take several hours to carve a handprint like the ones found at Jeffers. Step 3. Perform an experiment. The archaeologists decided to find out if their hypothesis was correct. They carved their own handprint and recorded how long it took. First, they painted the image of a hand on a quartzite slab. Then they found a piece of stone that they could use as a simple hammer. They recorded their start time and then started hitting the quartzite slab over and over again with their stone tool. Following the outline they had painted, a carved hand began to appear. Record the findings. When their carving finally looked like a hand, the handprints found at Jeffers, the archaeologists checked the clock. They discovered that it had taken them just 42 minutes to make the handprint. Step 5. Reach a conclusion. The archaeologists found that it was fairly easy to carve a handprint into quartzite using a simple stone tool. Since they were able to complete the handprint in 42 minutes, the results showed that their hypothesis had been too cautious. The archaeologists concluded the people who made the Jeffers petroglyphs could have carved a handprint in less time than the archaeologists originally predicted. Learning from each other. No one has answers to all the questions about the petroglyphs at Jeffers. Those who know the most about the site understand that they still have much to learn from people whose perspectives differ from theirs. Archaeologists often look to the oral histories of Native people to understand what the carvings might mean. Likewise, American Indian elders look at the information uncovered by archaeologists to enrich their understanding of their people's history. Sometimes the elders and the archaeologists reach different conclusions, but they can agree on at least one thing. The petroglyphs at Jeffers show us that people have lived in this place we call Minnesota for a very long time. Okay. So there we go.